I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And today we're going to be talking about my ex left me even though I was a good partner. How does that happen?
I know, it's very confusing.
It happened to me. It happened to me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can be a really good partner and thoughtful and caring and considerate and, bring a lot to the table, but the person you're with just isn't able to do it. And it could be actually for a lot of different reasons. People think that it's all about attraction. That's simply not the case. Mm-hmm. Okay? A lot of times we're focused on helping you guys improve yourself after a breakup. But many of you were good partners. And, you might be really focused or hyper-focused on what you did wrong, especially at first, which is normal. But you gotta try and be balanced and look at how good of a partner you really were. Stop beating yourself up and look at the positive things that you brought to the table. Once you are able to reflect on that and kind of pinpoint what you did right as well, it often takes off some of that guilt that we feel for the relationship ending, right?
And as a caveat, I'll say, this doesn't apply to everybody. So I really encourage you to self-reflect, to go back and evaluate your relationship. And if there are mistakes that you made, being honest about it, acknowledging it. But for some of you throughout, things were very good. You were attentive to them. You were empathetic. You listened. You were caring and really there for them when they needed. Mm-hmm. And actually, you'll see partners not even have any complaints. They might even say things like, "You were the best partner I've ever had."
I think we did an email coaching recently where they were like, "You were perfect," or I don't remember what coaching it was recently, that somebody had said to them, "Oh, you were like the perfect partner. You didn't do anything wrong." And you're like, "Well, why are you leaving me then?"
Yeah,
This
makes
doesn't
no
make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it does, because people aren't always ready to be in a committed relationship. There are different points in our life, depending upon our mental health, our attachment issues, things that are going on in our life, other obligations or responsibilities. They might just not be ready. Okay? And, you'll hear comments from exes. "You're the best partner I ever had. I want you to be happy. You deserve the best. You treated me so good. Anybody would be lucky to have you, and I want you to find somebody that would be lucky to have you, or feels lucky to have you." And you're like, "Why are you telling me all these things?
You could be lucky.
You were lucky to have me."
It's true, and it can be so confusing. And typically in relationships and in breakups, we tend to blame ourselves so quickly and so easily. We think if something goes wrong in our lives, it must be our fault. So we really want to challenge that today. I want to start out by saying that we don't live in a bubble. So there are external stressors that affect us, affect our exes, and can cause our exes to make a decision about the relationship. So some of these things can include some practical reasons. We see this a lot around long distance relationships. Somebody going off to work in a different state or a different country. We see this with military when they're deployed and having to stay away from a long period of time. We can also see this around work. We hear a lot of exes say, "I want to focus on my career." And it could also be values. Maybe you want to have kids and they don't, or they want to get married and you don't. And so those are fundamental differences that they don't see working. Other things that can happen that are outside of the relationship are illnesses that happen in the family, or illnesses that they're going through themselves. And it could also be deaths that occur in the family or people that are close to them. They could just feel way too emotionally drained to invest in a relationship.
Yep.
Which leads us to our next point here about avoidant attachment style. And so typically you would think a partner can help with that, and a partner will guide you through life and be able to adapt to changes, such as deaths that might happen around you or such as illness. But some people do not see it that way. They have a different perspective that's shaped from their experiences in early childhood, that they have learned, I have to deal with this myself and I can't burden somebody else with my issues and my problems.
Yeah, they feel guilty. I've seen that, where somebody is just like, I have to take care of this thing and I don't want to have to burden you with it. I don't want to have to get you involved with it. Yeah, I think people that have an avoidant attachment style are very likely to leave a good partner because it is, that level of health is uncomfortable. They're not used to that kind of love. It doesn't feel familiar. We're often drawn to love that feels familiar. And so if they grew up in a home where they weren't getting a lot of love, they were neglected, that's what they're used to. So if you're really loving and affectionate, that overwhelms them and they don't know how to say it. I know it's shocking because you're like, but wouldn't they want a good partner? In a way they do, but in a way, when you're loved in a way that is unfamiliar, you just don't know quite how to handle it. You're not used to it. You're not used to having somebody who is a good listener or so caring, and you know, you kind of shut down, or they kind of shut down. If they feel this pressure to connect with you on a level they're not used to, it overwhelms them, and they feel like sometimes that they're engulfed, or they lose their identity of who they are, and they just get really scared. And so, yes, avoidants often leave good partners.
And avoidants can also interpret your attentiveness and your caring as invasiveness and as clinginess. I remember even in my very first therapist session, I was like, dang, my therapist is so nosy. Why is she asking all these questions? I must have been like 12 or something. But to me, the concept of somebody being so curious.
Why do you want to know my name?
Yeah, I was like, what's the ulterior motive here? What's going on? A little bit suspicious.
You gonna turn me into the police?
I swear I didn't steal the teddy bear, whatever it was. But it's true, you know, those with avoidant attachment styles are terrified of this closeness. And so the healthier the relationship is, the more intimate it is, the closer it is, and the scarier it is. It makes no logical sense, but on an emotional level, it's a reactive response. So you have to remember that.
Yeah.
I also want to address this idea of the one. This is something that we've heard quite a lot, that those particularly with avoidant attachment styles have. I tend to think that it's an avoidance strategy to say, okay, well, at any point I'm just not having feelings of this is meant to be or this is the one, so then I can just drop the relationship without any further explanation.
I don't feel the same way. What do you want me to do? You don't want me to try and be with you if I don't feel the same way anymore,
You're
do
right.
you?
I'm just going to drop it. That's fine. Completely understand. Yeah, so it's a way to avoid that conversation and maybe even thinking further into painful experiences as to why they really are afraid. It could also come from a lack of experience, which we often do see people in their 30s, even late 40s, who haven't had long-term relationships or committed relationships. And so we always put that into question. Now, of course, culturally, there might be some differences there. In different countries, that might be more normal. People generally are starting to get into relationships later on in life. But it does make me think, okay, what has prevented them from having a successful relationship at some point? You know, whether it be a girlfriend or boyfriend, somebody in high school, somebody in college, what was going on there?
Yeah.
So it could also come from this fantasy, this idea of the one. Their needs weren't met in childhood, and so they've always dreamed about what that might be like, even if it's scary, because they're still human. They still want that connection.
It's a developmental arrest. They didn't get all this love and affection from their mother, and so now they're expecting it from their partner, and they can't articulate it. They don't think that they're supposed to be reciprocating. Relationships are supposed to be easy. Why is our relationship so difficult? It's almost like they want a magic fantasy world where they're just taken care of like you would a child.
Exactly. So you really want to consider where they're at. And I know all of this is really confusing. You might be thinking, how can this stuff from years ago be affecting them now? Why can't they just tell me this?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who have experienced this just are unaware.
Yeah.
So I also want to talk about what you are experiencing. Being so good to somebody, providing your best self to somebody. Maybe you're somebody who's been watching the channel for a while, or even outside of the channel, going to therapy, learning about yourself, learning about attachment styles, and putting your best foot forward in a relationship. This can really hit on a personal level, because you might think, even if I did my best, this person doesn't want me. How can it be? How can it be that my best is still not good enough?
Yeah.
So I want to remind you that their behavior is not an indication of your ability to be a good partner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But it feels like it. Mm-hmm. It feels like it. And a lot of times an avoidant will let you feel like it. And they will complain about things that you're scratching your head thinking, wait, you broke up with me because of what? Mm-hmm. This one thing? These small things? Like, I don't understand why you're leaving. And they leave you feeling like it's your fault, because then it's not on them. And they can kind of quickly scurry away and not have to deal with what they've done wrong, or how they've been a poor partner, or take responsibility for their actions, which is oftentimes what they do.
Exactly. And for some people, you might be the most secure person on the planet. You might have read every single self-help book that exists, every single relationship skill book that exists. And if somebody is not willing or ready to receive it, the relationship won't work. It's because relationships are a two-way street. It takes two to tango. You know, it really does take the willingness of two people to come together.
Yep.
And that person might not be there.
I've actually had a couple of female friends that I was friends with when I was younger that both said that I was so great to them, but they weren't in a place where they loved themselves, and they couldn't handle somebody who really, you know, valued them. And so they wound up dating guys that weren't good for them for a long time. And then they came back and said, you know, how appreciative they were of how I treated them, and, you know, that they cared about me and they wanted to date me, but they just weren't in a good place. And so that's what happens with a lot of people when they're not in a good place. They can't take that love from somebody who treats them good. They're just not ready for it. And this is why we're always trying to educate you on mental health and attachment, because it really is critical to having a long-term relationship and making it last.
Exactly. So we really hope that through this video you're able to see a different perspective. I know from your perspective it can be so confusing, it doesn't make any sense. Watch this video again if you need to. We have tons and tons of videos on avoidant attachment style on the channel, attachment styles in general. And so hopefully you can try to gain some of their perspective.
Absolutely. The more you learn about it, the more you can understand it, and the easier it is to navigate.
Right, and the less you blame yourself too.
Absolutely. Okay, so hopefully this one is helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. And of course, Coach Victoria is also available.
I'm here if you need to talk.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.